but not mute you.
Please do.
All right. Well, this is working well so far.
All right, we're ready to roll? Lucas, you ready?
I'm wait. Sheila forgot to pass me the stopwatch.
She handed it to me last week, Willie. We didn't need it. We figured we would forego that tradition since you can't sit up here.
And I'll warn you, Willie, Aiden's in the room.
All right.
Okay.
I think still 6:59 on my computer, but
Mine too.
okay. Okay, Lucas says we're live whenever.
Okay, we're live. It's like CNN. Okay, I'd like to call to order the Novi Community Education Board, Novi Community School District Board of Education regular meeting, April 2nd, 2020. And if we can welcome everyone. We have lots of participants here through Zoom tonight. We have a community member, and Mr. Mena, if you will do a roll call vote for us, that would be fabulous.
Trustee Cook.
Yes, here.
Trustee Hood.
Here.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy.
Here.
Trustee Roney. We see her. Is that an affirmative?
It's an affirmative.
Here.
There you go.
All right. Trustee Ruskin.
Here.
Trustee Smith.
Here.
Okay, if we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we will get an approval of the agenda. If I can have a motion.
Move to approve the agenda.
I'll support.
Moved by Mrs. Murphy and supported by Mrs. Roney. Mr. Mena, if you could do a roll call, please.
Trustee Cook.
Yes.
Trustee Hood.
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy.
Yes.
Trustee Roney.
Yes.
Trustee Roney. There you go. Trustee Ruskin.
Yes.
Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have an opportunity for comments from the audience related to agenda items. If any of our audience members would like to make any comments, we will have a time limit, but please just raise your virtual hand and we would love to hear from you. Okay.
There are no virtual hands.
No virtual hands. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the consent items. Tonight, we only have one item on our consent agenda. We have the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of March 19th, 2020. If I can have a motion.
Move to approve the agenda. The consent items.
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Mena and supported by Mr. Cook. Roll call, please.
Trustee Cook.
Yes.
Trustee Hood.
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy.
Yes.
Trustee Roney.
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin.
Yes.
Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Next up, we have our action items. We will start with our personnel recommendations. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin, and I will turn to Dr. Kinzer.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. This evening we have one retirement, Denise Gotham, math teacher at Novi Middle School. We also have 3 leaves of absence. Jody Balconi, second grade teacher at Novi Woods, a year 2 personal leave of absence. Catherine DeMonico, special education teacher at Novi Middle School, year 2 leave of absence. And Caitlin Gray, ELA and theater teacher at Novi Middle School. This is a year one child care leave of absence.
Thank you, Dr. Kinzer. If I can have a motion.
Move to approve the personnel report recommendations as presented.
Thank you.
I'll support.
Motion made by Mrs. Murphy, supported by Mrs. Roney. Any questions or comments for Dr. Kinzer? Okay, seeing none. If we can have a roll call vote, Mr. Mena, please.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yeah.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin,
Yes.
Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Next, we have on action items, Bond 2019 Contract Award Construction Services. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. At our last board meeting, we reviewed this recommendation. With the passage of the 2019 bond proposal, the district will be undertaking approximately $120 million worth of construction and renovation projects over the next 7 to 8 years, requiring the services of a construction management firm. The district previously engaged McCarthy and Smith to provide construction management services for projects funded by the 2014 Capital Improvement Bond Program through a competitive bid process. Because this was a successful partnership, the administration approached McCarthy and Smith to gauge their interest in extending the 2014 contract to provide construction management services in conjunction with the school district 2019 bond program. The district sought a proposal from McCarthy and Smith and Plant Moran Cressa, the district's owner's rep for the 2019 bond program, negotiated terms, conditions, and market competitive fees in conjunction with McCarthy Smith's bid for the 2014 bond construction management services. McCarthy and Smith's final proposal letter was reviewed at our last meeting in March. District administration and Plant Moran Cressa believe McCarthy and Smith's final proposal of 2% construction management fee is market competitive, meets board policy, and is consistent with the 2014 proposal with inflation considered. McCarthy and Smith's fee percentage is fixed for the duration of the bond. The Capital Projects Committee reviewed this proposal at its March 16th, 2020 meeting, and then this came before the board for information and discussion at its March 19th, 2020 regular board meeting, and tonight is recommended for award by the Board of Education. Ms. Minnick is here, and we also have representatives. We have Bill McCarthy and also Agnes Arbunkel from McCarthy Smith. So if there are questions, either Ms. Minnick or Mr. McCarthy could answer those. We also have Kevin Donnelly from Plant Moran Cressa. So if you do have questions, this was discussed by the Capital Projects Committee and also by the board at our last board meeting. But we do have people here if you have additional questions.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. We'll first take a motion.
I'll move to approve that the Novi Community School District Board of Education, in the best interest of the district, award the construction management services for the 2019 bond program to McCarthy and Smith Incorporated.
Support.
Motion brought forth by Mrs. Murphy, supported by Mr. Cook. Now we will have an opportunity to ask any questions that anybody has. I don't see any virtual hands. Do you, Dr.
Do you not see any
Matthews?
virtual
Oh,
hands?
well, we're trying.
Oh, there's Mr.
Oh,
Mena.
Mr. Mena, sorry.
There we go.
I got a real
How about a
hand.
non-virtual hand?
That
There you
sounds
go.
good.
Listen, I just want to thank Bill McCarthy for his willingness to partner with our district. Again, know that we value the work that you've done for us in the past, and we really look forward to continuing our relationship. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mena.
I'd like
Yes.
to echo the same sentiments. I'm really glad that it worked out for them to continue the work. I think they know our district really well, and I think it's been a really great relationship that we've had with them. So I was happy that the terms that got worked out and that we're moving forward with them. I think it's an advantage for both of us. It's a win-win.
Great. Any other questions? We have a quiet group here tonight. Okay.
Thank you.
We got thumbs up from Bill down there, so.
Thank you.
Looks good.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Mena, if we can have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin,
Yes.
Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Next up, we have our information and discussion. Under that, we have secure entry renovations contract awards. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. This is very exciting. This is the first opportunity that we have to bring before the board construction projects from the 2019 bond. And so I will turn this over to Ms. Minnick, who will review the secure entry renovation projects that we hope to accomplish this summer. Ms. Minnick.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. On Friday, March 20th, 2020, sealed bids were received and publicly opened for the above referenced project of secure entry renovations, the construction elements for Deerfield, Parkview, and Novi Woods Elementaries. In attendance were representatives from Novi Community School District, McCarthy and Smith, Plant Moran Cressa, TM Architecture, and interested bidders. Bid pack number 1, secure entry renovations construction, consists of 7 bid divisions: selective demolition, carpentry, general trades, ceilings and partitions, aluminum entrances, storefront, glass and glazing, carpet and resilient flooring, painting, HVAC and plumbing, and electrical. The secure entry renovations technology is a separate bid for the electronic security components and will be forthcoming. Bid pack number 1 is part of the 2019 bond project and will commence following the last day of school in June, with completion by late August, but also in accordance with any executive orders by our governor. The bids presented tonight have been analyzed and contractors have been interviewed. Attached in their board book is the letter of recommendation and bid tabulation from McCarthy and Smith, our construction manager. It is recommended that the Board of Education award bid pack number 1 projects to the following lowest qualified vendors in the respective amounts. Selective demolitions: DKI International Incorporated of West Bloomfield, Michigan, in the amount of $39,900. Carpentry, general trades, ceiling and partitions, award to Allied Building Services of Detroit, Michigan, in the amount of $321,850. Aluminum entrances, storefront, glass and glazing, award to Preferred Glass of Marine City, Michigan, in the amount of $79,125. Carpet and resilient flooring, award to Shamrock Floors of Ann Arbor, Michigan, in the amount of $19,550. Painting, award to Bella Paint and Design Incorporated of Rochester, Michigan, in the amount of $7,877. HVAC and plumbing, award to Contrast Mechanical of Macomb Township, Michigan, in the amount of $18,800. And electrical to Monroe Electric Company Incorporated of Wixom, Michigan, in the amount of $42,700. The total of these 7 bid divisions of bid pack number 1 is $529,802. It will be funded from the 2019 Bond Capital Projects Fund. The secure entry renovation construction project awards are presented to the Board of Education for information at tonight's meeting. They will be recommended for action at the April 16, 2020 board meeting. And with us this evening, to answer any questions you may have, are Agnes Arbuckle and Bill McCarthy, both of McCarthy and Smith, the district's construction management company, and Kevin Donnelly of Plant Moran Cressa, the district's owner's representative. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, please.
So, based on the information that we got this morning about schools not being open till the end of the school year, is there a thought that we might start early on this work? Has that even been? I mean, I know that all that information was new, but is that even a possibility?
I'll jump in with an answer from my perspective. It certainly is a possibility. We would need to verify that these would be considered essential workers, and that because only essential workers are allowed to come to work at this time. And so we would need to verify through the executive order that this would be considered essential work. And if it is, then we might have an opportunity to start early if the board approves this at our next meeting. And I don't know if the rest of you, Jill, Kevin, Bill, Agnes, have any other thoughts other than that. Bill looks like he wants to say something.
I think right now what we're looking at is following along the guidelines that are previously provided. We're reaching out to industry to see, in the governor's office to just get some kind of further clarification on it. At best, right now, what we're hoping for is based on what we hear, is an expectation that probably late this month or early May is when the ban possibly is lifted, and that would become ability to return to work type thing. The term of essential or critical is kind of vague, and they're deferring to be conservative in that to protect worker safety. So this would not possibly fall into that critical infrastructure type thing. So from that perspective, we would not see that jumping ahead of the current situation.
Thank you. Any other?
We need to be cognizant of the fact that, and Bill, this may impact you pretty dramatically if we come back earlier in August to mitigate the loss of days. That's another situation, unfortunately, for your team to address. But from an academic standpoint, frankly, that would be my hope. Sorry to say that, but we need to get our kids back.
Mr. Cook, I'm sorry.
I'll mention, if I may, that we did discuss this in one of our recent meetings. We will make every effort to construct around students returning to school. It would require us to designate a different entrance, according to fire code and such, as our main entrance. I don't know if Bill or Agnes or Kevin wants to speak more to that, but we did discuss that in our planning accordingly.
Sure, I can speak to it a little bit. So a lot of the actual work is in procurement, so ordering the materials and getting cabinets and so on. The actual work is extensive, but it's not long in duration. So if we have the materials ordered and stored, the execution, I think it would not be as extensive. So I think as long as we stay on procurement path and continue and get everything organized or ready, we'll try to do our best to execute as quick as possible.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, I saw you had your hand up a little while ago.
Well, once the stay-at-home order is lifted, then it no longer deems that it needs to be critical. Could we get going even a couple weeks in advance would be great. My main question, though, is this came in 44% over what we had budgeted. Do we have any understanding why we were so far off on the budget? And hopefully we can make adjustments or do whatever we can on future bid packages, because if we're 40% over on all our bid packages, we're going to be in trouble.
We might let either Bill or Kevin address that because clearly that is a concern and that has been discussed as well. So anybody want to jump in on that? Kevin.
Probably better suited to speak to the particulars about this bid. Okay.
So I'll speak to it. So when we established the budget, some of the work was not as extensive as what we're planning. So we're actually doing more in this package as part of the secure entrances. Then we're actually grabbing, I would say, more construction scope of the rest of the building. So we're also shifting some dollars from the furniture budget into this. The furniture for this portion of the package was pretty extensive. We've switched a little bit more to build-in cabinetry. And there's also a budget that was set separately that didn't get pulled into this, had to do with security hardware. So if you basically adjust some of the numbers and pull in some of that scope and don't reflect back on the old budgets, we're within about 10%. And some may be to do with the fact that we were bidding, right after we basically had the issues with coronavirus starting out. But overall, I don't have any concerns with the budget. I think it's a more of a reflection of grabbing and including more work as a percentage, because originally the work that was considered for secure entrances was really not as extensive in the offices, but was more pertaining to the doors and hardware entrances and very limited work. So basically the renovation that would be done now in phase 2 in those buildings, we're doing pretty extensive renovation as offices at the main entrances now.
Mrs. Roan?
Probably the last comment on this would be, we bid this out at late in the bidding season. So we were at the tail end of, we got kind of a higher economic bid, as well, because we're not early. And this was, we knew that going in when we bid, the bond passed in November, designing it and then bidding it out this time of year. We were fortunate to get the bidder response that we did, to get the coverage that people were still interested in looking at the work to be done yet this summer, because a lot of the contractors had been kind of filling up in capacity. So from that perspective, we were somewhat pleased to get at least a couple bids per scope.
If I may add that the afternoon after the bid opening took place, I had conversations with Agnes on the budget and how there were certain elements that were budgeted that we are not going to be tapping into. And so the budget is being, there are different sources of budgets, as Agnes stated, that we're pulling from. And so the budget overage will not be quite as drastic as it appears. And I'll also echo what Bill had to say is I was very pleased with the number of bidders for each of the divisions. We had at least 2 or 3, and I think for one we had 5 or 6. So it was a very good response.
Thank you, Mrs. Minnick. Mrs. Roney, I saw your hand up a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there is somewhere we can go and see the plans, like what they plan on doing, how we're hardening our entrances.
Of course, I'm happy to obtain those drawings and forward those on to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith? I'm sorry, go ahead, Jill.
That's okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
I just think we're going to be looking at this stuff consistently for a while now as we begin this project. So I'm looking for just some education, please. I'm looking at the bid summary, and there's a column on the far right that lists the bid range. I'm just a personal belief that just because something's cheap doesn't necessarily make it better. And I noticed the range for the electrical project seems to be the greatest variance, from 27,700 up to 92,000. So I'm looking just for some education on why would there be such a big variance in that particular area. And then I also would like to understand what it means under the summary items that Monroe Electric looks like on top of their bid, they're getting another 15,000. So if somebody can just help me understand that as I look at these moving forward, I'll be more educated.
Sure. So let's address the Monroe Electric one. So as part of the bidder's number, they were supposed to include a specific allowance that was going to be for work that we know we have to do for specific demolition and work inside of the space, and designated for separate work. And they did not include in their base bid that amount. So when we do post interviews, we go through and we interview typically the 2 low bidders, the respective low bidders. And we go through a checklist of everything they're supposed to have. It's typically like an hour, longer interview. It was clear, and they clarified it did not include that amount. But even with that $15,000 added in, they were still low. Now, speaking to the 2, additional numbers being so high, there are some factors. One is Monroe has done work in Novi, and they know the buildings really well. So they have, they have the ability of knowing what's there and what would be done and what needs to be done. On the other range of the spectrum, there is sometimes numbers that come in that are extremely high. I don't know if it's for lack of people spending enough time looking at the documents and really, I want to say wanting the project bad enough. But since it's, we vet out all the numbers after we receive them. And sometimes we do find situations where, for example, for the painting one, where the contractor, was not the low bidder, and we end up going to the second respective person because they didn't have the right scope. So the numbers will be in large ranges. It doesn't happen often, but like Bill said, it depends too on the timing. If a contractor has enough work, he may be still bidding, but putting in a bid that's significantly higher.
Okay, I understand that. If I can have a follow-up question, and I don't know if this is the best time to ask that, but very recently, as we all know, the interest rate environment is pretty different than it was, let's say, 30 or 45 days ago. Does that impact how quickly we might want to tackle some of these projects, or how does that impact our bond and all that other stuff?
We're in design phase, and Jill maybe can talk more about the interest rates and the money securing portion, but we're in design phases for 5 projects currently, and most of them are slated to be going for bid late this fall or for the winter, and that's really truly based on the large scope of design that needs to happen, and that's ranging from elementary schools to middle school to high school. And a lot of them are pretty extensive design because we're doing additions and longer durations of work that required it. This is actually extremely fast to have it all designed and bid out this spring and ready time to do it work in the summer.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Arbuckle.
Jill, you may want to add some of the limitations that were held to on the timing and procurement of the series of bonds.
Yes, I was going to mention that in regards to the bond funds themselves, on the date of the closing on March 3rd, we invested about a majority of the funds in a diverse mix of CDs, commercial paper, treasuries, very conservative investments, but there's still a significant amount that we left in cash because we weren't certain, just starting out, what our schedule might be, and just to be very conservative with that. So that is in our general pool that our district has. It's kind of a money market type of account that pays more interest than a regular bank. But we were very conservative in our approach, working with PFM, our financial advisors, on their bond investment group to be sure those funds were secured away and battered portfolio.
Thank you.
Looks like, can you see Dr. Ruskin? Kathy Hood has her hand up, her virtual hand.
I cannot. I can't see anybody's virtual hand, just real one. So, Mrs. Hood,
Has a virtual hand up.
your turn.
Hi, thank you. Quick question about that budget summary, the blue box, the lower left. And I don't know if these numbers are anywhere else, but the original budget, $367,000, a large portion of that was Deerfield. So can we assume that, I think the furniture you've allocated to Deerfield and Novi Woods, but the balance of that, is that proportionally among the 3 schools? And why is Deerfield so much more? What is
Sure.
Deerfield requiring that Novi Woods and Parkview aren't?
So if you walk into Deerfield, I'm not sure if anybody remembers, but there's a big, atrium space in Deerfield, and it's like a double wall that you have to walk through. It's like a glass arch space, and you have to walk through it. So to create the secure space, we actually have to move one of the interior glass walls into the school and create a space where it's like a atrium where you walk in and then create a new door that comes into the office into the right, because currently you have to go through both and go kind of around the glass section into the office. So we actually have to move walls. We have to change the fire suppression, the sprinkler system. It's way more expensive than other buildings where they have a smaller entry. So there's a lot more demolition, ceiling work, flooring work, and the entire curtain glazed wall that has to actually be moved and built completely new to frame in that whole secure section to basically create a new opening into the office. So that's a little more expensive. And in Deerfield, you know, the office space they were actually renovating is quite a bit larger in square feet footage compared to the other offices. It's a function of
Okay,
space.
thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other real or virtual hands going up? No? Okay.
There are no virtual hands.
Okay. Well, we appreciate having everybody here who's been a part of the intricacies of this project and the bid package and all of that to help answer questions. If any of the board members have any further questions, please forward them on to Ms. Minnick, and she can get us some further information and answers before this comes to the board for a vote on April 16th.
Thank you.
Okay. We will move on then. Next, we have another opportunity for comments from the audience. This does not have to be related to the current agenda. It can be related to anything that falls into the purview of the Board of Education. Does Jason?
We only have one
right.
community member, and that's Jason, and I've unmuted him if he wants to say anything.
Sure, since you unmuted me.
I can mute you right back, buddy.
Yeah, I just like to let you know, I sent a text to President Ruskin and Mr. Smith and Superintendent Matthews today that the Novi Educational Foundation is here to support our students, whether we are in school buildings or not. So if something is needed, please do not hesitate to call upon us. And we thank you for your service in this unprecedented time.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We appreciate you being here with us tonight and for your hand of support during this time. Okay. Next, we have Superintendent's Report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. My superintendent report will be surprisingly brief this evening. We have, over the past 14 days, we have sent a daily update to our community about what we're doing here in Novi to support our students, and I've also sent a corresponding email to our staff as well every day. As Mr. Smith mentioned, these are certainly unprecedented times, and we are trying to manage both our staff and our students and our families to make sure that we come out at the other end of this as in a good position as we can. Today, we were presented with a 17-page executive order from the governor that identified what is going to happen for the rest of this school year. And what is happening is that the school buildings are closed. I would like to emphasize that it is the school buildings that are closed, not our schools. Our schools continue to be open, just in a virtual way. Our teachers, since the first day, March 16th, have been communicating with our families and our students, and starting on March 18th and every Wednesday thereafter, they've presented and provided learning opportunities for our students in a virtual way. Dr. Weber in his Office of Academics and the teachers in our district have been tremendous in trying to navigate through this interesting time in education. We believe that we have a good approach. Our approach continues to evolve. And after spring break, which is next week, we will continue to evolve our approach for our students so that they can continue to get the things that they need to get to be successful this year. The governor was quite clear in her executive order that we should find ways to hold students harmless for this year. And so we are working through all of those details. Tomorrow morning, we have an administrative virtual meeting where we will begin to discuss the details of that executive order to make sure that we provide what our community needs to navigate through these kind of uncharted waters that we find ourselves in. I believe, our staff and our community have come together in a very positive way. We have Evolve Gazarato and food service continuing to provide food every Tuesday for families. This past Tuesday, over 650 families came to Novi High School to pick up food, and we delivered over 4,300 breakfasts and 4,300 lunches for the families in our community. We also have our technology department working tirelessly to ensure that our teachers have the resources they need to be effective in working with our students. We have our teachers who are working very hard to connect with students. One of the things that I think it's important for our community to remember is that school is much more than what goes on in the classroom. The classroom is obviously very important, but there's also those relationships and connections that students make throughout the day. They will go to lunch and sit with people. They'll go to recess. They'll have art class and music class and PE class and walks in the hallway. All of those things are lost. The relationship building pieces are lost during this virtual time. And so we're working very hard to try to continue to build those virtual connections so that our students don't feel like not only have they lost going to school, but they lost all the connections that they have. And so we're trying hard to continue to build those relationships so our students feel connected not only to their teachers. So I believe that we have started well and that we will continue to build from what we have started. And I believe that we'll continue to navigate through this in a very successful way. So I appreciate the support of the board, and I appreciate the support of our community and our staff, and we will continue to find our way through this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. We appreciate you. Next, we have our administrative reports, and we will start with Mrs. Minnick.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. I'll only add on to what Dr. Matthews had to say, and that there are a lot of things behind the scenes still happening. Our business office continues to pay our vendors, execute payroll. Our maintenance staff continues to do building checks and the like. Other than that, I don't have an administrative report for you this evening.
Thank you. Dr. Kinzer.
I have no report this evening. Thank you.
Dr. Weber.
Hey, so I'm going to kind of delineate a few things, but while I'm doing it, if board members could think about any kind of questions or wonderings that they've had from parents in the community or parents yourselves around academic issues, I'd appreciate those coming forward at the conclusion of what I'm going to kind of clarify here for folks. So as Dr. Matthews said, it was March 13th, March 12th, when the governor decided it was time to shut things down in schools. We were here March 13th, and about 100 teachers and different folks met on that Friday to plan what Dr. Matthews said we've been engaging in, and this dropped every Wednesday. The backbone of that are our content area leaders. And for those new to the school board, these are teacher leaders who teach a full day. They represent teachers from every level, kindergarten through 12th grade, in every discipline, fine arts, core subjects, and so on. And it was a strategy that Dr. Matthews and I went to 10 years ago. Rather than having curriculum coordinators, instead we chose to empower our teachers. And really, it's our teachers who have provided the backbone and the architecture for our ability to pivot and move so quickly, but in a right way. So if you look at our curriculum, K through 12, that was 100% teacher created. And that's been over the past 9 years, which has allowed us to do things that surrounding school districts are really struggling with. And this is not any time to compare or to thump our chest by any means. Actually, we take a lot of pride that we've offered all of our work open source to anybody who wants it at any time. But surveying parents from districts around us in Plymouth and Brighton and South Lyon and so on, our teachers are absolutely way ahead of pacing on those districts. And I would consider those are districts that border us. So thank you to our content area leaders. These are folks who, have 3-4 kids at home and are working extra to pull together our plans that we're going to roll out on April 20th. I'll get to that For our principals, I had a 2-hour meeting with our principals today, just a building leader meeting and assistant principals. They're struggling, in knowing how to support their kids and their teachers. And we actually were meeting when the directive from the governor came to close things down. And I'll tell you, a lot of tears at that moment, because then it became real. For most, for the people I serve beside, this isn't a job, this is a calling. And to know that you can't do it in the way that we need to do it for our kids is hard. On the summer school front, we're really fortunate to have Linda Chinfera leading our summer school efforts. And we have a very robust framework for that. The investment that the school board has made in community education for the past 10 years, when every district around us has dropped it, is going to pay huge dividends for our community and our kids. Massive. Dr. Matthews and I have already been speaking, and I've put Ms. Chinfera on expanding our summer school if that's possible. Everything's predicated on the virus. We're on the virus's timeline. We don't know what that is. But what we know is we have things in place that we could ratchet that up in a hurry and help a lot of families. Around student agency, today I had a couple-hour Zoom with students working on what can they do to organically create networks to support each other using platforms such as Zoom. And in that call, guess what happened? One of the students said, I'm bored as heck. Could we create a network that we could help kids who need help with their work? Absolutely. And we're going to miss big time if we leave the voice of our students out of this, because they have some of the answers that we need. We gave a parent survey 3 weeks ago. Sheila Holly, absolute rock star there. 700 respondents, the majority of parents at this time were content with what we were providing. Now we'll see what happens as we go deeper. We gave a teacher survey. 400 teachers participated in that, and letting us know how they're faring with it. What are they seeing? What are they hearing from their kids? From a technology standpoint, we distributed 2 weeks ago about 175 Chromebooks. Right now, I'll say I don't feel safe at all in distributing any more with where we are in this crisis. We have to be very mindful at any time we ask any staff member to leave their house that we're putting them in some sort of danger. And it's a really difficult place to be in right now as an educator, to think that we may not be able to give people everything they need. But we also have a real obligation to protecting our staff members as well. So on April 13th, which will be next Monday, that full week, we're going to launch our learning opportunities on Monday. April 20th, though, will be the actual rollout to students and parents of a much more direct and articulated instruction program. As I mentioned, we have the architecture with Atlas and the CALs, but we also have the infrastructure. So Seesaw will be our primary method of communication around that K-6, Schoology 712. Hopefully by that time, they'll have built some of their bandwidth. And then Zoom as well as a way to have meetings between teacher and class. I can tell right now that my son is over the moon that tomorrow he gets to see his buddies because they're doing a Zoom tomorrow. So we have the infrastructure for that, thank goodness. Thanks to the community for spending money on all of these things and the board for approving them and that they're here for us. Our heavy social emotional learning efforts over the past 3 years are also going to pay huge dividends for our kids. Dr. Matthews has mentioned this, but we have to focus much more on connection right now than content. Our students, and if you have some in your home, you'll know what I mean. I can just tell you, my kid is a pretty stoic kid, and he's struggling with the isolation away from his friends and loves school. And not being able to go there, no matter how much I know about SEL and how much I try to be attentive to that, our parents and our kids are going to need a lot more support than I think any of us can even imagine right now at the table. So thank goodness that we invested in social workers. We've invested in things like restorative practices, all of these different pieces that can help us. And finally, what I'll say is I think it's critically important that we message to our community that while the students aren't with us right now, we will provide every opportunity we possibly can. But one thing I can guarantee right now is that when our students come back into our schools, we will have an exceptionally well thought out and articulated plan that focuses on the acclimation of our students back with us, that we will do everything we can to get fourth graders back to their elementary schools so they can at least have the experience of leaving. We will take care of our seniors so they can have as many experiences as possible, and that we will spend the first good bit of time together attending to the needs that we're going to have. On the technical front, I'll say it again, the architecture and infrastructure we have will allow us to flourish in this time, frankly. I feel absolutely horrible for the districts around the state who aren't as fortunate as we are. And upon our return, I want our parents to know that we are going to be so incredibly on top of welcoming your kids back and our staff back that they'll be very, very well taken care of. We don't know when that is, and we'd be idiots to say that we do, but we can get there. Any comments, questions, or concerns?
I do not see any, Dr. Ruskin.
Mrs. Roney?
Sorry, I had to unmute. I have a few parents that, of course, have seniors, and of course, they want to know, how it's going to be handled. And I'm sure we're going to put out in the community as soon as we can.
That is correct. We're not sure of how graduation will happen, but we certainly will figure out a way to celebrate the class of 2020. We've talked about perhaps holding the graduation in July, for example, as opposed to in May. So we are exploring a variety of options, and we understand that it's an important milestone and certainly one that we want to celebrate. And so we have a deep commitment to making sure that we find a way to celebrate that with our students and our parents.
Thank
And
you.
Mary Ann, for some additional perspective, our seniors who are in performing arts, band, orchestra, choir, all had huge events that they were preparing for in the spring. And I think that as a mom who's participated in those things. So, one of the things that we've also talked about is those seniors doing perhaps a community performance once we're through this in such a way for the Novi community as a way to give back. Many of these kids have been with us since they've been in kindergarten. And we want to try to do everything we can to have them be able to look back on this and feel that they have some closure.
Anybody else have any questions for Dr. Weber?
Bobby has a virtual hand up.
Okay, Ms. Murphy.
It maybe more of a comment really than a question, Dr. Weber. You certainly see posts from teachers, some things like that on social media about how much they're working hard to connect with students. And I personally know, some of them are struggling at home with managing their own students and the time that they have. And I just want to say that, on behalf of certainly a parent in this community, that all of that is really appreciated, like the extra effort that they're having to go to at this point in time, and certainly what you're going to expect from them, going forward. There's so many. I love the idea that the students have expressed that they want to be able to help other people. They have the time on their hands, so they can help other students. I think that's fantastic, and I think that I've had other parents that have texted me who have said, "What is it that we can do to help?" Are there other students that need iPads, for example? Because we have 2 that we're not using, and we would love to just make those available to people. And so I think this community as a whole is looking for ways to help. So certainly keeping that in the back of I guess, our minds at all times, that if there are opportunities that don't obviously risk life and limb for people, that they could participate in helping, whether it's students in the district or staff in the district or whatever, that maybe we need to just kind of keep that in mind, that we do have a community that cares very deeply, that is there and is willing to to go to some effort to.
And I think, Bobby, where I could really see that very, very pivotal is the time that we're allowed to be back together a bit. We're going to have so many students in need of additional reading and mathematics remediation and help that this community, you're absolutely right. So many people want to run towards it right now. I can say there's no looking back at, and Steve was there helping, they're looking back at how we distributed our technology 2 weeks ago. There's no way that we could do that today because of what we know about what's happening. So people's desire to help is beautiful. I would say let your friends and community members know that we're going to need you in the back end tremendously. And that could be, from coming in and doing reading with our kids when the time is right, to other pieces. So we'll need you, and we'll be excited to have you.
Dr. Weber, one of the things that I've been hearing from a couple parents, and maybe just reassuring the parents that they're doing what they can, and what they can is enough right now. Because I think the first, 7 to 10 days were like, yeah, I got this, I can handle this. But there are some parents who are really struggling to kind of help their kids, to educate them. They're not educators, and they're feeling that pressure of I'm not doing enough, or because it's not mandatory, my kid is not really motivated to do it. And that's okay. They're just not right now. It's a lot for them to take in. It's a lot for the kids to process. It's a lot for adults to process. And that just reassuring them that anything that they're doing is helpful, and that in the back end, as you say, the supports will be in place to help bring those kids up.
So Danielle, that's great perspective, because I think Steve, Gary, Jill, we need to make sure we put that on our messaging going forward on April 20th. I've been, again, an educator for 29 years, and teacher of the year, principal of the year, yada, 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 and I'm struggling, and I only have one kid. Like that's the truth. I'm not gonna, if I can get a couple hours where I feel good about a day, that was a great day. Just because while we're handling our own lives, the big thing to remember is that this isn't a 3-week snow thing. We're in a pandemic. This is very different than anything of just flipping the switch to virtual schooling or expecting parents to be able to handle that. This is something that no one on earth has ever seen before. I mean, if you think of it, no one. So grace is going to be a key word in our plan. Thanks.
Well, we kind of rolled over into board communication, so we'll just continue right on that road. Does anybody on the board have any comments, questions, anything to share? Mrs. Murphy?
Yeah, thank you. Just real quick, kind of on another note, from communication from the community. So I did get a phone call from a parent that part of the concern too for some of those older kids is the setback that it might be for them, and that if they're capable of doing additional work, that providing additional learning opportunities because they're old enough to own their education, right? So just trying to find the balance of that, I think, is going to be really critical. Which I'm sure you guys are already talking about that, but I just the parents of all the school districts that should be able to figure this out, we are probably one that should be able to figure this out in terms of how we can still allow kids, and I know we're providing them tons of deepening opportunities right now, but I think this particular parent has high school students, one of which will be going off to college next year. He is a senior, and trying to make sure that the experiences he's having now with the depth of knowledge prepares him then for being in college. And I know that you're talking about the summer slide, a little bit about the summer slide, RJ. I think that's in parents' minds too, at least the few that have kind of reached out to me. It's just like, what does that then do for the next year, and how do we try to mitigate that? So like you said, there needs to be grace, but also just kind of that ownership that some kids can't take up for their education. And this is a time to kind of see what they're capable of so much more, I think, than we give them credit for too sometimes. So not that.
Bobby, I think to any parent who would say that, well, we have all of these advantages and so on. Dr. Matthews alluded to this. You know, what we do in our classrooms and our hallways and our spaces matters. And I'm not going to lie to anybody. It's gonna do harm to our kids. There's no doubt about it. We need to do the best we can to stay on top of it. For our K-11 students, I do feel we can mitigate a ton with different scheduling options, different pieces to bring that in. You know, I'm most concerned about our seniors right now for a whole host of reasons. People who are looking forward to athletic seasons, and it might seem small to some people out there, but these kids are feeling a tremendous amount of that loss. So what I would say is I think it's incumbent upon us to be honest, to confront our kind of brutal reality right now, and to not overpromise things that we can't deliver. And I will say, and I'll be the one to say it, we cannot offer the same experiences that your children would have had with us.
Any other board comments? Mr. Meno?
Yes, thank you. Again, just want to reiterate that I certainly, as a board member, very proud of everything that our district has been doing during this time. I think everything's been run as best as could be expected. I did have a conversation this week with our state rep office, and they pretty much reiterated what I had felt. Certainly, there's a lot of school districts within their congressional district, and Novi is definitely one of the districts that was mentioned to me that is really staying on top of things. And as Dr. Weber alluded to earlier, that's not really the case across all of the districts here in Oakland County. So again, special thanks go to all you guys for all the great work that you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Mena. Mrs. Roney, I saw your hand up before.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about how wonderful you guys have all been through all this. Miss you guys all. I did see Dr. Matthews on the news today, though I did miss the 6 o'clock portion of it, so hopefully you were on a bit more, but very proud that we were there. And I know we'll come through this, maybe a little scathed, but I feel that Novi will come through with its head up, and we'll, do the best we can for our kids with what we have. And that's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Roney. Mr. Smith?
If I can go back for a second to the human resource report, personnel report. I just want to thank, I don't know the details behind, obviously, some of the personal reasons for leaves of absence. But I know Jody Balcone's been a friend of the district and has done a lot of great things. So I hope she comes back and continues some of her great leadership that she's done over the years. I also want to recognize Ms. DeMonico, who has helped my son Thomas, who is now an 8th grader at the middle school. And, she's another example of the type of professional I would hope we could retain or find more people like that really approach their calling, as Dr. Weber put it, with a lot of passion. I appreciate it. Sounds like, RJ, you've got, your hands on coming up with a great plan. It's funny with all 3 of my kids, they all have different things that they're concerned about. Thomas wouldn't say it because he tends to be a little stoic, but Amy and I had just been in the middle school a couple of weeks before they shut things down, going over an IEP plan with him and his specials person and one of the teachers. And it kind of stinks because, we felt after coming out of that, 90-minute IEP meeting that we had identified some things that Thomas could do to finish his 8th grade off strong as he made that transition to high school. And I think he's probably not the only 8th grader that's going to have some anxiety jumping straight into high school without finishing 8th grade. My middle daughter had spent literally months practicing and investing time, and her parents investing money in tennis lessons so that she could make the varsity tennis team this year. And as you guys know, the tryouts didn't even get finished before they pulled the plug on that program. She's devastated. Ashley's concerned as a senior about are there going to be finals? You know, what are those going to look like? Are they just going to get whatever grade they had when they left school, or how are they going to be able to impact those, you know, those last few grades? Because now that last semester is looked at by the colleges that they're attending, and it's important to a student like Ashley to finish her senior year off strong. So I know each family has their own stories. You know, Amy is a parent and a volunteer in the community who spent hours with other parents. I know you guys have all gone through it, making plans for the senior all-night party, and getting gifts and donations from companies and accepting deposits from all the different organizations. And these parents have put in hours and hours, and they're all left wondering, you know, what's that going to look like? So I know you guys have your hands full, and it sounds like you're on it. It's just a tough time, but thanks, everybody. I miss you guys, too.
Thanks, Tom. We miss you. Anybody else? Marianne and her little love hands. Mrs. Murphy?
I just want to say, I certainly echo the comments. I think we are way ahead of the game. And I do think the updates that Dr. Matthews have been sending out with just a consistent, steady message of encouragement have been just fabulous. At least I just really appreciate that that connectionness that you're trying to maintain. And I don't know that every superintendent is doing that. So I just want to say thank you. I think you're the right leader at the right time for this district. And I do appreciate you too, Dr. Ruskin, in your first term as president. Just the work that you're doing and taking on right now. So, and my fellow board members as well. Obviously, this is a tough time for everybody. So, I do miss seeing you in person, but it is good to see your faces this evening. And certainly we're in it together. So, that's a better place to be than all alone. So, appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Mrs. Murphy. Yeah, and I'll just end by saying, you know, I have similar stories to Mr. Smith. I always appreciated my teachers, but that my students have had, my children, but didn't realize how long it took to help a few of them get words on paper. And, you know, there's no voice to text on this computer, so let's run over and get that computer. And by the end of the day, we've absolutely done nothing, and that's okay. Like we pointed out, it's really about the experience and helping them and making sure that they're feeling okay and comfortable with even the small amount that they've accomplished, just like we should all feel. So I've shared with Dr. Matthews and the team that we as a Board of Education are here to be by their side and to just even offer moral support and to show this community that we are a team and that we're here to collaborate and to support them every step of the way. And I know that we all feel like that. So it's great to see all of you tonight. Tomorrow was supposed to be spring break. I'm going to have a cruise on my driveway. Today, my kids sat out on lounge chairs as if we were on the promenade deck. So drive on by and we can wave. And so it does feel good to actually have spring break starting tomorrow afternoon, although that sounds a little bizarre because we haven't been in school for 14 days. But it will be nice to just have a breather where we can all just think about what's really happened and where we're going and how we're going to take a few steps forward from here. So that being said, I think, Mr. Cook, do you have anything? I don't want to leave you out. You're great. Okay. All right. So I think that I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh, that was so fast. I can't even. Let's do that a little slower. Mr. Mena, supported by Mrs. Roney. Nope. Yep. Good. We're great. Okay. Mr. Mena, if we can have a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Hood?
Yeah.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Trustee Roney?
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Meeting adjourned.